Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Around the Blockchain. I'm your host today, Joshua Jake, as DZ is on his way to a one-year-old's birthday party. And yes, he's with his fiance, so it's not weird, guys. Today, we're going to be breaking down who is Satoshi. Did HBO actually uncover and identify this individual? Is this good or bad for your Bitcoin bags? Of course, we have the IMF stepping in and telling El Salvador, hey, you can't touch Bitcoin or else we won't work with you. And last but not least, we have a huge story about, of course, Kamala Harris and President Trump on who will be better for Bitcoin. Today, I, of course, have special guest joining me, Kelly Kellum from none other than BitLab Academy, and Kevin Svensson here joining me today. Kevin, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. Markets are bouncing kind of right where they needed to be honest. So I can't complain. It's a green day, green numbers coming in. So it's good.
It's always good. I think we've been all at the edge of our seats as we've bounced between 60,000 and 62,000 the last 48 hours with like war breaking out, hurricanes, chemical clouds. It's been crazy. Kelly, how you feeling today? Got any headaches from the chlorine in Atlanta's air today?
I'm feeling great. I think I'm built a little bit like a cyborg after I've had 87 surgeries and I have all this metal in my body. Nothing really affects me. But it's on the same note as what Kevin was just saying. Kevin and I were laughing about it last night on Spaces and also just in our private discourse online. So many people getting so upset that October's canceled. Guys, it's only 4 days into the month. And I think I'm going to twist your arm. We're going to talk a little bit about markets at the end. So stick around for that. And we got to get into some questions here.
Yeah, does the lead in your body drive you a little crazy like George Washington did back in the day with his lead teeth? Or are you good? How do you get through the day with all this lead in your body?
Well, the evolution of technology has been as such that they do not use lead in bodies anymore. It is titanium rods, but I definitely feel it when the weather changes a lot. I start getting little sore bones, but I don't know if that's because I'm an old man now or if it's because I'm just a customized lightning rod.
Well, you heard it here first, guys. Kelly's rod changes based on if it's cold or hot. And today, the markets definitely look a little hot as we have a nice green rod up to $62,300. But first, guys, we got to tune into an HBO original that is being released this Tuesday, identifying the very identity of Satoshi Nakamoto. Take a look.
Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, could be one of the richest people on Earth. But many years ago, Satoshi had disappeared, and with Bitcoin being woven into the fabric of the financial system, solidifying its role as digital gold, perhaps the question of Satoshi's identity was more pressing than ever.
We should start with just an interview with you in Malta, if that sounds good to you.
Okay.
Who would have been working around the clock to introduce something like Bitcoin?
A lot of technical people will say, I could have done that. It's actually much harder than it looks.
Anyone confident enough to go do Bitcoin probably would be confident enough to not leave any traces.
Satoshi's got nothing to pick up by his stash.
Yeah, just 1 million Bitcoin. A currency derived from electricity might pose a real threat to the dollar.
3, 2, 1.
If it gained in popularity.
I'm the crazy prince that is talking about Bitcoin.
What we're trying to do is get parallel systems in place. Dollars, Bitcoin, pesos, Bitcoin, yen, Bitcoin.
If it looks like something could replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, three-letter agencies will do whatever they can to disrupt projects like Bitcoin.
I would rather buy shit that's worth something than buying crypto.
Bitcoin is about undermining the Federal Reserve, disintermediating the nation state.
It's not like Satoshi had some master plan.
Yeah, it's like you're in some sort of cult.
You guys are having fun now.
Right?
Satoshi left a lot of digital history.
When he left, he distributed control amongst different people in the community.
Were you the first person that Satoshi reached out to?
I believe so, yeah.
Best evidence of him being Satoshi.
Of not being Satoshi.
Being Satoshi.
What indication did you have that he was collaborating with the government?
If you dig deep enough, the inconsistencies will emerge.
Seems like he's responding.
I've been told Satoshi was a group of people.
I have to be careful talking about that topic.
He checks a lot of boxes.
I will admit, you're pretty creative. You come with some crazy theories.
Here's what I think happened.
It's Bitcoin. Don't trust, verify.
And there you have it, guys. Money Electric, the Bitcoin mystery, being released October 8th here, just next week, next Tuesday. I have to start this off, Kevin. Do you believe they actually identified the creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto himself?
So in this documentary, I would say the likelihood is pretty low. I think it would have been bigger news. It would have probably already been leaked. It would have been talked about. I think if they really did, I don't think it would have been something that you have to find out in a documentary who Satoshi is. So the fact that it's, that it's being marketed like this, I think they're just trying to get more sales or whatever. I do not think so.
You think they're kind of shilling, as one would say in the crypto space. Kelly, do you believe that these reports claiming the documentary revealed the unmasked identity of Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, or is this just a complete utter lie?
Well, unfortunately, what I'll have to say is a bit darker than I think anybody wants to hear. I think the truth is if Satoshi Nakamoto was found, he would have been unalived already by different three-letter agencies globally, or in some way imprisoned, or we would see movement in those wallets because other people would have access to them. I do not think that I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that they have found out. I think what's happened is a group of people thought that they were creative, and they built I'm sure it's going to be an entertaining documentary, but they probably arrived at what most of us that have been in the space for quite some time have already sort of drawn the conclusions on who the person or a small group of persons are that are likely to be Satoshi Nakamoto as a person, and also the tertiary group that sort of filled out that space. But no, I don't think they found out this is a person, this is the definitive thing. I don't think we will ever know, and I don't think we should ever know.
Yeah, a lot of people might believe it's Sassaman or Hal Finney or the XRP community gets out there with their theories, with David Schwartz maybe taking the reins on Satoshi Nakamoto's creation. But do you have any guesses, right? I mean, for people that are just listening in now, there's a lot of individuals that are just now coming into crypto's market. They are just figuring out what Bitcoin is for the first time. Do you believe the CIA developed this? What's a little bit of this history, and what is it that you're talking about when you mean everybody in this space has already came to the conclusion that they will not or may not ever figure out who Satoshi Nakamoto is?
Well, I think that there's been a long, Bitcoin didn't just get printed out of thin air, as people say, or get created and it's the first of its kind. It's the first that took a world of different technologies and different skill sets together within the programming, coding, and internet model that basically stepped all the way to finally having all the pieces fall into place. We've had eCash before. PayPal initially, X Payments was initially trying to do this many years ago. But the story goes all the way back into the 70s when you really look into the genesis of Bitcoin. Now, from my knowledge, I think, and of course, we can't really verify any of this stuff. We're also, relying on some of the words and thoughts and research of other people. But the people that I trust that I've looked into and the things that I found suggest that it's Hal Finney is definitely part of either the person, the group, or the immediate group. Adam Back also is one of the people that unquestionably, he was the first person that got Bitcoin sent to him. But then in addition to that, the question about the security agencies, I would believe that security agencies did not create it. However, the person or persons that were most directly involved with the building out and developing Bitcoin had somebody in that close circle, had some ties at some point to three-letter agencies because, for instance, the NSA has the ability, for all of you that don't know, nearly every technology that any of you have touched that aren't super duper cybersecurity experts, every technology that you own has built-in backdoors that the NSA has access to, and Bitcoin somehow has been able to circumvent every ability to have any backdoor that out of every technology ever. You can't do that without having somebody that has some knowledge of what those backdoors are.
So before I ask the $1 million question here to Kevin, guys, just a quick reminder for anybody that is brand new to Around the Blockchain as we bring this back, guys, make sure you hit +1 in the chat if you agree with the creator that is speaking in regards to any of these questions, and -1 if you disagree with anything we may be saying. And of course, just let us know in the comments, who do you believe is Satoshi Nakamoto? Kevin, I have to ask you, okay, the $1 million question is simply this. What happens if Satoshi Nakamoto's identity was revealed? What happens to the price of Bitcoin?
That's a great question. I think the market will be quite stunned by that. I think it'd be a shock. I don't think that Satoshi, if Satoshi is actually revealed, anywhere he or she goes, right, and around the world, they're a target. Somebody's going to try to capture them, torture them, get the keys, whatever. So I don't think it's Satoshi's even one person. I think it's a good narrative. It's kind of convenient to think that Satoshi would just be a lone wolf. But SHA-256, as we know, the cryptographic hash function was created by the NSA. Now, it may not have been a deliberate plan or sort of program that they ran that they're going to, create Bitcoin and it was going to play out exactly in this way. But I think it's very likely that people inside the NSA were involved in creating Bitcoin, whether they went rogue, created Bitcoin and, sent it off to the world or sent it to Hal Finney. That's possible. It could have been a more deliberate program, but there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that it came from in that sort of circle. There was many decades of development of very similar technologies, and somebody in the NSA named Tashuki Akamoto. It's like it sounds just like
Sanichi.
Wrote, I'm trying to read it right here. It's Satoshi Nakamoto, and they wrote documents, white papers for things called single-term divisible electronic coins. Another one was called inefficient divisible electronic cash scheme. Another one was universal electronic cash. So they were developing things kind of like it. I actually loaded all of those documents into ChatGPT a while ago and asked ChatGPT to cross-reference all the documents to find similarities with the Bitcoin white paper. And ChatGPT couldn't quite find anything that was strikingly similar. So Bitcoin was a huge leap ahead of what they were doing in the NSA. But it's still pretty questionable that all this was being developed by the NSA, SHA-256 created by the NSA, published in 2001. So, I think somebody either went rogue or maybe it was a deliberate program, but it was probably more than one person, I think.
Yeah, I would have to actually agree with that. I think, a lot of people don't even realize, though, that Bitcoin's not necessarily the first crypto, as you mentioned. There's, dozens of revisions and models that were trying to approach and fix this double spending problem. Bitcoin was the first true self form of, completing that idea of the double spending problem. So, this kind of leads us to the next question that we have here. We have a crazy poll coming out from Yahoo Finance is reporting on this from September 30th. Crypto traders are equally divided on Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, new poll says. So, as a crypto channel, I very much want to hear from our audience themselves, guys. Type 1 in the chat if you're voting for Donald Trump. Type 2 in the chat if you're voting for Kamala Harris, because according to this poll, that 47%, Harris and Trump both enjoy 47% support among crypto traders, according to a new consult poll commissioned by Coinbase, America's largest registered crypto exchange. So, according to Coinbase, voters might be kind of floating in between the two ideas of both of a Trump administration and a Harris administration. Crypto might have an impact, and there are, of course, 6.5 million crypto owners voting in 7 key swing states. This includes Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and North Carolina. The Federal Reserve has recently tallied the number of crypto owners at roughly 18 million. So the question to start here, Kelly, what are the 2 different tops for Bitcoin with each candidate? As everybody is kind of moving into this election cycle saying, man, I don't know who's necessarily going to be better for crypto. In your mind, what does a Bitcoin top look like under a Trump administration? And what does a Bitcoin top look like under a Kamala Harris administration?
It's such a good question, and I think we need to start this with the preposition of people need to separate these ideas of Bitcoin and crypto. I I wholeheartedly believe that Bitcoin and crypto are two different asset classes. I think the terminology cryptocurrency is the worst nomenclature that we could have ever come up with for this both of these asset classes because they do so much more from that than that. They are the infrastructure, they are the railroads, they are the rails for everything that's being built into the future. And the reason why I say that is regardless of the candidate, I think Bitcoin is going to do okay. I think Ethereum will likely do okay as well. However, a lot of people, all of you out there watching, throw one in chat if you've got a lot of altcoins. If Kamala Harris and that administration continues, there's been nothing, not one single thing that they have done in the last 3 years that's been anything other than suppressive to the broader crypto ecosystem, specifically alts. We can see that by their ongoing support and just heraldry of Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler. Now, with that being said, do I think it's going to put a little bit of a damper on what the top can be for Bitcoin? Maybe, but you cannot stop this beast. It's the same question we had about Satoshi Nakamoto. This is the best asset in the history of the world. And Satoshi Nakamoto right now has more Bitcoin than I still believe than even all the ETFs, which just launched in this year, right? It's the best asset in the history of the world. So do I think it might put a little damper on it if it's Kamala Harris? Sure, let's say 130,000 for a top, 150. I'm talking on the low, low mid side. If it's Trump, I think the low side is going to be somewhere in the 160 to 180s, and the top is good. I think we're about to see an absolute adoption wave, and this Uptober is still going to be an Uptober, and we're going to show you why at the end.
Hey, we're up right now at $62,427 with a nice little green run up here. Kevin, the macro doctor here, can you give us an analysis on what a macro environment would look like under the Harris administration versus the Trump? Do you have any idea or expectations out of this next 4 years?
I think that what's really clear, Kamala Harris, she proposed a 50% capital gains tax. If I'm right, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I couldn't even believe that headline when I saw it. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So Kamala clearly doesn't doesn't care to even like understand or appease the markets. She doesn't understand like how policies affect markets. She wants to like control prices and like I think that it would put a damper on markets in general. I think investors might be a little bit more hesitant. So I think the growth would be lower than Trump. I think Trump is very much focused on markets and getting the markets as high as possible, and that's something that he takes a lot of pride in is pushing markets higher. He talks about every time the stock market would hit a new all-time high, he would talk about it when he was president. So I mean, he drove the stock market up during his term, and he's going to try to do it again, and it's one of his goals. Kamala Harris, stuff like the 50% capital gains tax, CEOs, if they knew that they would have to pay 50% capital gains, they'd probably be laying people off and it would hurt the economy. I mean, it's Trump would certainly, I've no doubt, certainly be better. If I would say Kamala, the top, maybe like 124,000. And then if it was Trump, I don't think it would be all too different. It depends on what the stock market does, maybe a little bit lower. But I think with Trump, we might hit something like 142,500. So yeah.
Let's get those numbers for the chat here one more time. What was that last number you just presented?
142,500.
What gives you that
target?
It sounds like a very specific target.
Right, and so I can maybe I can send this to Kelly. He could pull it up, but it's based on a reducing ratio that I use ChatGPT to measure from each cycle low to the next all-time high, cycle low to all-time high, and cycle high to next cycle high, and the ratio that number, that reducing ratio, and it lands at a low end of 95,000 and a high end of 190,000, and then the middle of that is 142,500. So it's just sort of it's a range, but it's like the middle of the range. I can send that to Kelly in a second here.
Yeah, I'd love to pull that up here in just a second so we can throw it up on the screen. As traders in the crypto industry, then we are less than 30 days away from this election. And I know a lot of retail investors out there watching these channels, watching these shows, tuning into CNBC, all these morning shows. They're all trying to figure out how they set up the portfolios and their positions moving into this election cycle, right? So what are you guys doing right now? If you have these price targets of $142,000 or maybe a minimum of a 90K, I know Kelly seems to be a more of the upper band here towards that $160,000, $170,000 price point. How are you guys positioning your portfolios right now in a time that is full of uncertainty? There's been a lot of volatility in these markets. Are you longing? Are you shorting? Are you dollar cost averaging? What's that play coming from Kelly? And then, of course, we'll go back to Kevin with his chart as soon as it gets to the screen side of from the basement here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think it's very poignant for any of us content creators that are actively investing and actively trading this market. I think it's very confusing because I might say this is an absolute buy, and then 10 minutes later, I also might be shorting on my trading portfolio. So I'm doing both at the moment. I'm on the very much smaller allocation of my trading portfolio. I'm trading both ways, but the majority, I'm talking like 95% of my my accounts are I'm positioned long. I think the majority of what's happening right now is still noise. And I went over this for about 5 or 8 minutes on BitLab Academy the other day because I do have a problem sometimes that we get on these channels and we talk so much about how we're positioning ourselves in time of war. And there's people out there dying. There's people out there. There's so much going on. And there's so much compassion I have for all of that. And I'm incredibly empathetic to that. But when you also have money in markets, I can be compassionate, but also say, how do I navigate this? How does the market feel about this? So looking at that, I do think the majority of everything going on right now is noise. And I think if there's one candidate, and it's the candidate that's in the poll that we just did, that far outpaced the current incumbent candidate, I think if we go that direction, I think a lot of that noise will clear up. I think even with what's going on right now in the Middle East, I think there's still a lot of jockeying going on, but being the nature that we're at right now with everything going on with how nuclear the world is, I think there's more posturing than the likelihood of some, cataclysmic event of truly going into Armageddon. So again, I think October's still here. I do want to throw it to Kevin's chart here because he did share it with me.
There it is.
This is that chart that he was talking about. This is a ratio that he's done through AI calculation, basically calculating the previous cycle lows to the highs and looking at these and how this could be projected forward to where basically a target. It's not a guarantee. It's a target of where things could go. High side of that range is 190, middle of the road, 142, low side, 95. Now, I think Kevin would agree with this. You don't ever just say, hey, the high side is 190, so I'm holding out to that target. And you also don't just sell everything at, a mid-range target. You figure out once you're you're starting to get deeply in profit and you have an exit strategy now. I want to encourage everybody. What is your exit strategy? Not just one lump sum, but where are you going to start scaling out of this market so you can take the best advantage and protect yourself in profits and also risk manage if the market were to move the other direction?
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of scaling out of this market, we have the IMF telling El Salvador now to cut back on Bitcoin. But is the strategy fizzling out anyway? Because this is a topic world leaders are very scared to, it seems, have with all these foreign countries. The IMF has urged El Salvador to reduce its Bitcoin reliance, with the IMF also calling for better regulatory oversight of the crypto market that we've obviously seen the current administration fail to do over and over and over. We just recently had, of course, the SEC they appealed the XRP lawsuit with Ripple, which is damaging, and of course saw XRP's price action go from 66 cents almost all the way back down to 50 cents, hurting the XRP community once again. So it's very clear we have this lack of regulatory oversight. But President Bukele conceded that El Salvador's Bitcoin adoption has fallen short of his initial expectations on top of this very matter. So pointing this back over to Kevin here, do you believe El Salvador should roll this back and adopt the United States dollar more? Or is this a long game that they have to just dig their boots into the ground and hold on for dear life?
I I find it very peculiar and strange that the IMF cares. Like, why are they going after El Salvador and saying, "Hey, stop buying so much Bitcoin"? It's kind of ridiculous and almost suspicious. I think maybe they see that they made the right move, and if they keep buying too much Bitcoin, they're gonna have, they're gonna end up having a lot of power and wealth and stuff like that. So that is very strange to me. Um, yeah, I mean, I also had some points I wanted to make on what we were talking about before, but I didn't even see this article today. But El Salvador should definitely hold on for dear life, continue to stack, and continue to be involved in Bitcoin because clearly, I mean, I think we're ready to go pretty soon here, guys, with the rates coming down. So,
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit then, because I mean, obviously, this is all geopolitical landscape, right? So, the regulatory oversight that the IMF might be worried about is due to the fact that the last 4 years we've had no clarity on this industry. It's been all regulation by enforcement. So, what do you see the Bitcoin price hitting here by the end of 2025? And why is that? You brought up, of course, the quantitative easing monetary policy. What's your focus and outlook right now for the rest of the year?
yeah, so, well, I guess there was a few thoughts that I had, and you were saying, how are you guys positioning? What are you guys doing right now with your portfolios? And one of the mistakes I made is that I went a little bit too altcoin heavy too early. Um, Figure that altcoins would follow Bitcoin more, but what happened was the rates went up. There was a lot of uncertainty. The world began to deglobalize, right? There's sanctions being placed everywhere. There's a lot of, war. And so people were looking for sure bets for most of the past, year. And so Bitcoin went up. A lot of the top coins went up, and a lot of the other ones kind of just bled out. Now, Bitcoin usually continues to gain dominance into the all-time high. And once Bitcoin breaks the all-time high, that sends out a shockwave through the media and retail comes back and people start buying altcoins and then Bitcoin dominance goes down. Though Bitcoin continues to go up while dominance is coming down. And above that all-time high, when Bitcoin starts closing weeklies above the all-time high and start like marching up, then the altcoins surge. And so I think from now into November, we're going to probably see if Bitcoin starts to push back up to the highs. I think the altcoins are set up for quite a big beginning of their run going into sort of the end of the year. And I think the new year, I think, Q4 is going to be a good quarter for crypto. And it's also Q4 season. The seasonality shows Q4 is good for crypto, usually, not every time. But election years, if you look at the S&P 500, every single election almost ever in the United States, the market went up into it. Every single one except Obama because of 2008.
Yeah.
Every single one. I encourage you guys, I have a free to use indicator. It's just US presidential elections names and dates. It's on TradingView. Just click on that. Scroll all the way back. It's always a pump into the election every time. The Fed likes to keep the markets comfortable and cozy for the elections because they don't want to be accused of interfering with the elections or changing the outcome. So I think that Q4 is going to be good. And I think that we're going to start to see as the rates come down, altcoins are most likely going to be starting to, starting
I
to
have a
actually do
follow up
something
to
for
that
once.
because, as you bring up, Obama's administration was the only one, and this was due to the great recession that we had in 2008 with the housing market collapse. Quantitative policies have changed dramatically with the Federal Reserve. In fact, quantitative easing and tightening are virtually new models that have been implemented because of course, the Great Recession here. We've had new, repo markets created. As we see interest rates cut, if a lot of people are very concerned with this because there's terms of a soft landing, transitory inflation, and usually, I mean, I think we can all look through history. 90% of the times, the Feds do not hit this on the head. In fact, they usually get it wrong. So as we saw in 2008, as well as the dot-com bubble, when we cut interest rates, within about 2 to 4 weeks after those interest rate cuts, that first initial decision, saw pretty hefty pullbacks in that market. So do you believe this time is essentially different, that the Federal Reserve has actually successfully implemented what will be known as a soft landing? Or do we have some uncertain headwinds moving into Q1 of 2025?
Yeah, so that there's obviously that chart floats around on social media where people talk about whenever there's a rate cut, the markets crash, and people just say, "Oh, well, every time rates cause a market crash," and that's not the case. The rate cuts are in response to a crisis event or an underlying economic issue. Right, 2008, they're dropping the rates because of what was going on. They wanted to release pressure off the economy, and so if you go back to each time they
Pulled
drop
up
the
the image
rates,
here, Isaac.
there's a reason for it. It's not they didn't just drop the rates. Yeah, there it is. And even people tend to think that when rates are going up, that's bad. When rates are going down, that's good. Or the initial rate drop is bad, and all this stuff. But economics is quite like quantum physics, and it's like neither here nor there. It's very, very, very hard to predict. It's not always the same. In 2017, when Bitcoin went from 200 to 20,000, the rates were rising the whole time. So why did the markets do good then? It's because the Fed was acting in a way that was very predictable. They said what they were going to do, and then they did what they said they were going to do. And then investors and traders saw that and said, okay, I feel comfortable here. This is all very predictable. I'm going to speculate. I feel comfortable to speculate. Now, when the Fed starts, sending the rates through the roof all of a sudden, and it's like super unpredictable, people's heads are spinning. People, the floor sort of drops, and people just, let go of what they have, and they get scared. So the Fed's predictability is very important for markets, right? And so we're slowly getting back to a point where the Fed is becoming a little bit more predictable. That initial rate rise was like people were like, "What the hell's going on right now?" Right? And then they pause, and now they're sort of telegraphing what they're going to do, and they're saying what they're going to do, and it's all going as planned. And I think that markets are going to feel comfortable with that, and we're probably going to end up, being in a more stable environment, especially going through the election season. And most models, at least a lot of the people that I talk to, and also my models point to September, October of 2025 would be about when the global liquidity would come down again, and we could see a major downturn in the markets. So that's 80 weeks after the halving is almost always when the bear market kicks in, right? So I have a free to use indicator on TradingView called Bitcoin halving cycle profit. Go on the weekly chart, zoom out, you'll see halving 40 to 80 weeks. And altcoins top on the 80th week almost every time. And Bitcoin early cycles, it was sort of right after the 40th week after the halving. And then it started to line up with the 80th week after the halving is where all the tops have come in the past couple cycles. So
Love it. I love it. So you're looking at very positive action moving into the end of this year. You're looking for markets to hopefully normalize in the sense that the Feds are going to be more predictable, leading us back to this high liquidity environment that pushes us up, of course, to a peak around sometime of October 2025. Kelly Kellum from BitLab Academy here. What is your outlook on this as well? I mean, of course, it seems like we all have the same understanding and opinion on more Bitcoin adoption is better. So El Salvador should probably continue to stick to their guns, especially if we have price predictions and models that are playing out a scenario of 100, 150,000, 200,000, and so on over the next decade. What's your outlook here for the rest of the year as we approach elections? We have these interest rate cuts. We have the strikes. There's all these wars. What are you focused on? What is the magic on your charts indicating that Bitcoin's going to be at by the end of this year?
This is the most important thing to consider about the IMF. The IMF is a hospital that profits on sick people, and it's making sure this sick person, aka this country, El Salvador, is staying sick. And the sickness is the US dollar. The sickness is not actually the US dollar. The sickness is the central banks and the Fed. That's the sickness. So they're scared out of their wits that El Salvador is on the path to become a shining light on the entire landscape globally for other countries as an example to exit the broken system. So yes, El Salvador should stay on their track with Bitcoin. They should bolster what they're doing. They should hodl to, this is life or death for many people, especially for a country the size of El Salvador. What I'm looking at into the end of the year, everybody on that same note as what he was just talking about, Kevin was just talking about, we just passed the halving. That's the start of the shaded area, the halving. What have we seen post halving? Consolidation. consolidation, about 170 days. We've just gotten into that right now. We're at like 169 or something like that. And so I still expect the next cycle is up. And I'm gonna sort of tout Kevin's charts here for a second because he's unable to screen share. But this is a great chart he shared yesterday. Yes, is October over? No, not at all. We've seen since May, the start of May into the end of May, up and then down. Start of July into the end of July, up and then down. August, up and then down through September. We've had this up thing. I do not think we're going to have a down month like we're seeing here. Maybe we have a small down, but I don't think we're going to close below 52. I start getting worried or start questioning where I think things are going to go based on if we break below 52. But I still think we're up, and that's because where's that other chart I want to show? This right here. This is, look, last October, 7.4% crash from October 1st, about 10 days. And then the month still closed 29% up. This is where we're at. This is the October 1st. We're down 5%. People are losing their minds. Where do I think we're going? I think the price action is still going to resolve to the upside. May it be a little bit dampened right now by that uncertainty in the markets because what's happening geopolitically? Sure. Are things maybe waiting on what this next administration is going to do? Who's it going to be so we can understand what they might do? Because I forget who said, I think Maya Angelou said, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them the first time. The current administration has told us who they are. Why are they going to do anything different? They said they're now friends with the crypto. They're going to make a new relationship with the crypto industry. And now we're just getting another appeal on the XRP. We're seeing just more of the same. I don't think that with the current administration, the fear of the current administration staying in power, I think that's adding a little bit of that damper. So where do I see things going? I see them going up either way. It's just a question of between now and then in November, can you hold on to your butts? Because everything that's happening right now is just a mechanism to move money from the impatient to the patient. So just ask yourself when you're about to panic sell, do you want to contribute your assets to a rich person's third boat or fifth vacation home? Because that's all you're doing. Because this asset class is destined for greatness. It's just a question of, can you stack in? Can you hold on?
So we still don't know who Satoshi is. Both presidents are going to be bullish for the outcome of crypto. Maybe one more than the other. I tend to be on the side of I want more energy production. I want more Bitcoin mining in the States. I want more liquidity, as Kevin Svensson was talking about moving into October. That is all a bull case for a super cycle. And I want us all just retire. And man, holy smokes. I think everybody in the crypto markets deserve 4 years of complete vacation and a full free cycle, just rich on an island somewhere, rebalancing all of our chemicals on our body from the stress that has came with it. I have gray hairs. That's not a good thing. I'm 27 years old.
I've lost hair since I've entered crypto, man.
This is I'm first cycle, Kevin's second cycle, or other way, Kelly second cycle, Kevin's third cycle here with the hair, guys. But no, it's it's a beautiful outcome, guys. And I'm just we're all beautiful. We're all beautiful, guys. That's how this works. But Kevin, I want to get one last take here as we wrap up for the audience here. What does that liquidity injection look like? Why does that matter? I would like to just kind of hone in on that exact argument on what you meant by the global liquidity. I mean, does this mean more money's being printed? Is this going to be mass inflation? What's that mean for my dollar? And why is that beneficial to Bitcoin?
I mean, what is it going to look like? That's I don't know. I don't know if I could really predict that. But what I was saying is that I'm not sure if I mentioned something else earlier, but about 80 weeks after the halving, the global liquidity begins to decrease. And that's it's kind of a coincidence, or Satoshi's a genius and sort of understood the liquidity cycle and launched Bitcoin right at the right time and had its sort of growth pattern just line up with the global liquidity cycles. So yeah, I mean, we're likely going to see, all the models are pointing to 2025. So we're probably going to top second half of 2025. But yeah, I think the Fed's going to be acting more predictable, like I was saying before. It's not going to be like 2020 where they just sort of like, took like a tsunami of money and just threw it at the markets and whatever. I think it's going to be a little bit more methodical, and I think it's going to be pretty comfortable generally. The only issue is war. and instability, and whenever there's war, there's a phenomenon of wartime charts, meaning that you can see growth and all that, but when the news comes out and there's conflict, there's a quick reactions in the market. And so I think we're going to see, upside, continued growth, more liquidity being pumped in, but choppiness based on the uncertainty of the world. So it's not going to be straight lines like, from 2008 to 2020. No straight lines, I don't think, for a while. I think it's going to be the straight lines will come back like probably after 2030. But wartime charts, choppy charts, in wartime, there's a lot of innovation, right? Especially from the military side, tech side. AI is now being heavily used in military. And so the innovation is going to be astronomical because AI is going to be able to program itself and create its own discoveries from everything from medical to financial, whatever. So we're in the era of uncertainty and big changes, huge changes, which means markets are going to probably be choppy. We're going to see growth, but certain sectors are going to see booms, right? Booms are going to come from all of the new, most likely AI sector, blockchain sector, all of the emerging markets right now. And yeah, it's gonna be an exciting time. It's gonna be a very strange time. And just like back from the 80s or 60s to the 80s, a lot of the top companies came out of that era when the market started to go up only. Of course, we went sideways in the early 2000s, but we're in that era, I think, where it might be a little choppy and certain sectors are going to explode, and then we're going to find some of the top companies in the next 50, 100 years are going to be created now, most likely. And so there's huge, huge opportunity. Imagine buying Amazon in 1999, right? I mean, all like stuff like that. That's what's actually happening now. It's happening now. You just got to find it, right? Maybe it's not there yet, but a lot of these companies are going to be emerging soon. And yeah, with great change, there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's tremendous opportunity.
I would have to completely agree. And with tremendous opportunity, come smashing the like button on this video, guys. Kevin, Kelly, thank you for joining me today, guys. We will be seeing you guys all next Friday on the Round the Blockchain, guys. If you want to keep up to date with the latest information, the latest news, the latest updates going on in the macro environment, whether it's war, whether it's strikes, whether it's El Salvador, Around the Blockchain is the place to do so, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. We will see